Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. It's April 9th, 2021. We're very glad you're with us this morning. Our agenda today, we'll start out with success stories. Then we'll have everybody put their 30-second introductions into the chat box, which I'll then get out to everybody this afternoon via email. We'll then go to our committee reports, workshop, job fairs, the PIT Crew Interview Success Workshop, the career tip of the week, and then we'll hear from our speaker for our main event today. Just as a reminder, hopefully everybody, you've got your full name in the chat box. If you don't have that in there, if you just have a full name only or last name only, we ask that you go and please just hover over the more key or over the little camera, and you should be able to go and rename yourself. That way I'll know who you are and I'll capture that information along with information on the chat box to make sure we get you on the roster for today, in case anybody ever questions if TWC would come or your workforce office would question if you participate in this event. For those on Zoom, we ask that if you have questions, just put them right into the chat box. And for those on Facebook, please just enter your questions into the comment field. Please note this event is being recorded and is currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, and if you post a comment in the chat box or have your microphone or camera on, you give consent for your comments, name, and picture to appear. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Morris. I've been facilitating and leading the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group since 2007. The group's been around since the late 1990s. I took it over in 2007 when the guy who was running it got a job and said, who wanted to take it over? And I think I scratched my face. He said, okay, Jeff, you're it. So I've been leading it ever since. In 2008, I started careerdfw.org to help people find all the things you need to know about networking and job groups in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. There really wasn't an up-to-date current place to find that information out. So that's why I started that. In 2012, after being invited to go to the White House and finding out that there really wasn't nobody else in the country was doing anything like Career DFW in the country, I decided in 2012 to launch careerusa.org to help people around the country. I've written a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search That You May Not Know. It's available on Amazon, and for those in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, if you want to drive by my house, I'll sell you one for $10. It's $15 on Amazon, and all the proceeds from the book go to support Career DFW. And since 2017, I've been a member of the practice interview team, and we'll hear more about that in just a couple of minutes. Well, we like to start the meeting off with success stories. I didn't receive any emails this week from people who've landed. Do we have, if anybody's landed, please unmute. Oops. If anybody's landed, please unmute your mic and please let me know. Do we have any good news to share today? Going once, going twice. All right, I guess it was a quiet week this week. All right, what we want everybody to do now, if you will, is please open up the chat box, and then in the chat box, please enter your name, comma, phone number, comma, email address, comma, position you're looking for, comma, a couple target companies, and then hit the return key. And I will then copy all that information and get that out to you this afternoon. For those people who are watching on Facebook, please put that in the comment field, and I will go and I will delete that information right after the meeting's over, so it won't be hanging out there forever and ever. So we'll go 30 seconds on the clock. And for those of you who are still typing it in, that's great. We'll get all that information out this afternoon. And please, when you get this email this afternoon, please look over this list and see if there's any target companies that somebody else knows that you may have a lead to. You know, try to help somebody out every day. I mean, hope help one person every day. That would be really, really great. All right, let's see here. All right, it's time for job fairs, career workshops, trainings, things that are happening. Good morning, Eldon.
Good morning, Jeff, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. As Jeff said, I'm Eldon Zarinsky, and I bring to you the career and job fairs and the upcoming workshops or special events. The information that I'm about to present comes from the calendar tab of the website careerdfw.org. There are many categories on that calendar, as you can see by the nice colored distributed chart on their screen. Again, I focus on career and job fairs and special workshops or events. I go through these items fairly quickly. If you hear something that interests you, I urge you to go to the calendar, click on that item, and find out more about it. There's usually a link that will allow you to do so and or to register for that event. All right, having said that, career and job fairs this week. Unfortunately, there really aren't any career and job fairs, but there are a couple of upcoming recycling events. The United Electronic Recycling event will be held this Saturday, April 10th from 9 to 11 at St. Andrew's United Methodist Church at 5801 West Plano Parkway in Plano. They handle recycling of things like printers, faxes, copy machines, CRTs, televisions. They can't accept TVs, LCDs, or monitors with broken screens. But anyway, they do accept that stuff. And the third Saturday of each month, if that happens to be what's coming up, there is also a paper shredding opportunity as well. There's another one of these events coming up on Saturday, April 17th from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., this time at Christ United Methodist Church at 3101 Coit Road in Plano. This week's special workshops or events. Online Networking Mondays. Join Career DFW and CareerUSA.org each Monday from 1 p.m. to 2:15 p.m. For Networking Mondays, there is a Zoom link and a Facebook link on the calendar that you can click on to find out more about that. Also on Monday, April 12th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., a workshop on people skills, interviewing. It's your audition. On the 12th, there will be covering the topic of time management, and there is a registration link for you to register for that. Online LinkedIn Tuesdays, Tuesday, April 13th from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. LinkedIn Tuesdays at 1 p.m. features Locke Alderson, Terry Sullivan, Ruth Lipsky, or Kurt Vondemutter for an online session, and you can join that with a Zoom link or a Facebook link as well. Employability with a Background workshop will be held Tuesday, April 13th from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. This is at Opening Doors for Women in Need at 3600 Horn Street in Fort Worth. These had been virtual. I urge you for more information to visit the Facebook link that has been provided in the calendar. Online, also, Interviewing Wednesdays at 1 p.m. This is Wednesday, April 14th from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. Normally, it's a 13-part workshop put on by Mark McDonald, who is the leader of the pit crew, and Walt Glass, who runs the Interview Success Workshop. They'll resume that 13-part workshop in May, but for the month of April, they have 4 guest speakers. And on 4/14, they'll have a seminar on the 10 biggest mistakes that people make in interviewing, and that'll be conducted by Tony Bashara. And if you haven't heard Tony, I urge you to participate in that. He's a very well-known recruiter in the area. Online Resume Thursdays with Carol Brickell, Certified Professional Career Coach, will be held Thursday, April 15th from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. And finally, on Friday, April 16th from 7:40 a.m. to 9 a.m., the online Third Friday Internet of Things Special Interest Group Breakfast. And if you're interested in the Internet of Things, I really urge you to participate in that. They usually have a very nice guest speaker, and it's a very interesting group. And that's it for this week.
Great, Eldon. Thank you very, very much. All right. For those people, if you know somebody who just lost their job, please let them know about Career DFW and Career USA and all the training and programming that we're putting on. Right there on the very front page, I just lost my job. What do I do now? Takes you to a great article with a lot of great handouts and checklists and things that you can do to get yourself going if you know somebody who's lost their job. I know, it's amazing over the years as I've met people who they've worked for 20 years and this is the first time I've ever been laid off. They didn't know what to do. So if you know somebody in that boat, if you know anybody who's laid off, please let them know about the services that Career DFW and CareerUSA.org offer. It's time to hear from me about the practice interview team. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Jeff and everyone else. It's good to see you guys. And the practice interview team, let's see, we did 3 practice interviews this week. We have 1 scheduled for next week. We could easily do 3 more next week and possibly 4 more next week. So our slogan, practice early, practice often, because every time you practice, you are going to get better at interviewing. And so we want to help you get to the point where answering questions is very straightforward for you. You have a voice for every situation, and then you can focus on showing your enthusiasm and building rapport with the interviewer, some of the advanced stuff that will differentiate you from all the other candidates. So here's how you do that. When you're ready to practice, you need to send me at dallaspitcrew@gmail.com, and here it comes on the chat window. There's my contact information, and for LinkedIn and for the Pit Crew. So if you send your resume and a job description to me, then I'll go to work setting up a practice interview. We do them on Zoom now. We do them any day of the week, Monday through Friday, sometimes on the weekends if you have a need. And they're about 45 minutes long. The people who give the interview are all in job transition, just like you. Some of them are retired like me, but most of them are in job transition just like you. So they're walking in your shoes. And so we offer a very safe and supportive environment where you can practice, and it's also very customized to your situation, the job description that you pick and your resume and background. Now you really ought to practice. There's a couple of high priority situations where you need to practice. If you're changing careers, if you're trying to, leave accounting and go into healthcare or something like that, then you ought to come and practice until you get that down pat. And then also if you're just changing industry, so let's say you're an accountant and you want to move from one industry to another, that's another area where practice is really beneficial. But really any practice will move you that much further ahead to being the top candidate. So that's the Pit Crew. And it's free. I didn't mention that, but it's free. There's no cost, no charge. It's all done as part of the volunteer efforts to get you back to work. And I guess lately, and Jack Bick mentioned this on Wednesday at the webinar when he spoke at the interview Wednesday, is just start to think about how much time you can save or how much time you can reduce in your job search by practicing, and turn that into dollars, and so if you make 60,000 a year, that's 5,000 a month. So, a month or 2 or 3 can slip away, and you don't want to lose those opportunities because you were unprepared for interviewing. All right, so if you'd like to link in with me, please, there's my LinkedIn profile. Just you can it's in the chat, but you can also go to LinkedIn and just search for Pit Crew or search for my name and include the middle initial. Just send me a note that says we met on North Dallas Career Focus Group on Friday mornings, and that's good enough for me. I'll add you to my network, and that'll help you find contacts inside your target companies. I have a pretty good sized network, and mostly in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and it's a very broad set of people because now that I've been doing the Pit Crew for about 8 years, I'd say more than half of my contacts are from the Pit Crew efforts. So, and then on the webinar, as Eldon mentioned, there's 13 sessions in the webinar. We finished that up at the end of March, and so we have 4 guest speakers, and then we'll start up again in May with session number 1. So that's Walt Glass and I, and Walt's going to introduce himself next. So Tony Bashir's presentation is really good, and that's coming up next Wednesday. I highly recommend it. And Jeff will give you the rest of the schedule at the end of the meeting. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, Mark. Good morning, Walt.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's Friday. Well, let me ask you something. In baseball, you've got to learn how to throw, pitch, and catch. In golf, you got to learn how to hit that ball and do different things with the ball, be able to strike it with a club. In other sports, you have to do the preparation. In basketball, if you can't dribble and shoot, there's no need to show up on the floor. So here we are in a selling situation with an interview. And if you don't know how to really do a good job of selling who you are, what you do, and how you can help, it doesn't really matter. You've got to come with those fundamentals. And so that's what I offer to everyone. It's a free workshop. It's very informal. We do it over Zoom, but we learn the fundamentals of the basic questions that you can get by categories in an interview, and how you can sell those three fundamentals of I am, I do, I help. Then you're prepared to go to an interview that says, all right, let me apply those fundamentals into a regular job interview. So I offer both situations. I offer the basics where we go through the 11 categories. We get feedback and coaching on those. You get a video of your interview. It's really a short interview, a little choppy because it's covering categories. It's not meant to be smooth. It's meant to be a learning environment. So register today. You have to be registered to attend. Look me up on LinkedIn. All the details about the interview workshop are there. There's my email address so that you can send and say, I'd like to register, and I'll give you some availability dates, and we'll get you started. You know, learning does not have to be hard on us. It doesn't have to create fear and anxiety. So I love a situation where we can learn, have some fun. So why not come to the workshop where we have learning without squirming? One other thing that I want to mention to you is a question. Does interviewing create anxiety that drives you away from sobriety? Then remove heartburn, come practice and learn how to rejoin the employed society.
All right. Thank you very much, Walt. Good morning. Thank you for being with us. All right, it's time for the career tip of the week. Good morning, Karen.
Good morning. The career tip today is 7 effective strategies for streamlining your job search. The pandemic turned one of the tightest labor markets in history on its head. At its peak in April, unemployment reached 14.7%, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and may have been even higher. So people still had jobs and hung on to them. People who voluntarily left their jobs fell to 1.4%, the lowest level since 2011 during the Great Recession recovery. Now employers are looking to hire again. Monster's Future of Work 2021 Global Outlook found that 82% of employers plan to hire in 2021, including 37% who plan to fill positions left open after layoffs, and 35% that are hiring for new jobs. Here are some ways you can focus and streamline your job search to be most effective. Know what you want. Stop being so open-minded about your job search, says Rob Barnett, author of Next Job, Best Job, A Headhunter's 11 Strategies to Get Hired Now. He counsels people to figure out their North Star, the true career goal they have, and then to focus their effort on the path to get there. Build your case. You need to create a rock-solid case for why you're the best person to fill the role you want. That requires 3 key elements. First, what is the job in your heart? What do you love the most? And what do you want to be doing? Second, be brutally honest with yourself and determine whether the job you want intersects with what you're best at. Where are your strengths? Where have you had your biggest career wins? And third, prove it. Barnett says that thinking about transferable skills alone can be dangerous because hiring managers want to see that you have some experience doing what needs to be done. Make a case for why you're the best person for the job that includes some relevant experience. And if you don't have that, start building it. Invest in yourself. The pandemic has led to a wave of skill building and training. There's so much free or minimal cost development online now that you can continue to develop your skills, your competencies, and your capabilities, says cognitive behavioral researcher C.K. Bray. He's founder of the Adaptation Institute and author of Best Job Ever, Rethink Your Career, Redefine Rich, Revolutionize Your Life. Prioritizing your own professional development shows initiative and can help you get closer to a meaningful career. Barnett says that sometimes investing in yourself requires taking a more junior role in your new chosen field or role to help you build the skills you need to advance. This should be considered on a case-by-case basis in light of your overall career goals and level of experience. Do your research. Spend time researching the company and role you're targeting, says career coach Angelina Darasaw. Use LinkedIn to find out who had the position before you and look at their background. That may help you identify your own strengths and career parallels. She says, I'd even go as far as considering using a new LinkedIn message to reach out to that person and seeing if they will spend time with you. Take those extra steps to show that you're really interested in the position and that you're also going to make sure that you are a good fit. Of course, use your network to determine if you have contacts who can either give you information or help with an introduction. Ditch the time wasters. Uploading your resume to job search sites isn't worth your time. Neither is interviewing with companies where you really don't want to work. Do not go overboard when updating resumes. Too many people spend far too much time laboring over each word and how big the margin should be when the key is to update it and get it out there. Spend time on your online footprint. There are some important areas on which to focus. It's important that the job history, including dates, titles, and companies on your LinkedIn profile, align with those on your resume. Review the company's job ads and incorporate some of the specific descriptive words the company uses, so those words will show up in the applicant tracking services. Review your public social media profiles to ensure that they reflect you as you wish to be perceived. And last, focus most on your network. Each of the experts recommended tapping into your network now. Touch base with contacts from your past and review the LinkedIn contacts of people in your network to see if there are opportunities for informational interviews or introductions. Also, if you're actively interviewing at a company where you really want to work, Bray recommends staying in touch with the team even if you don't get the job. Ask questions about what they think you can work on to be a stronger candidate. Then take the advice to heart. Companies are becoming more aware of keeping runners up in mind for future positions.
Karen, thank you very, very much. And that was the career tip of the week is on the Career DFW and Career USA website. It updates every Saturday afternoon. So please check it out. Sometimes those are little V8 moments. You read it and go, wow, why didn't I think of that? So Karen, thank you very much. All right, coming up in just a couple minutes, negotiate, closing the deal for what you're worth with Krystal Yates. She'll be with us here in just a couple minutes. I want to let you know about upcoming sessions. Next week, our talk will be about, is consulting right for you? In 2 weeks, life lessons with Steve Zipkoff, always a very interesting and fun person to listen to. And then on the 30th, PJ Dunn will be with us to talk about strength finders and core clarity. So those are our 3 upcoming talks the next 3 weeks. All right, time to hear from our speaker. Krystal is a senior certified HR professional with a background in both human resources and small business operations. She's been working with job seekers since 2010 to assist them in all facets of job hunting, including resume writing, networking, interview prep. In September of 2018, Krystal published her first book, The Insider Guide to Your Dream Career. Krystal holds both the SHRM-SCP and SPHR certificates. I guess that's Society of HR Professionals. And she's a member of the Ford's Coaches Council and an active Dallas HR member and volunteer. So Krystal, thank you very much for being with us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Fantastic. I'm excited to be here. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Excellent. This is one of my favorite topics to share because I think it's so overlooked. Most people, when they're out of work, are hesitant to negotiate when their next job comes around. And we leave so much money on the table. So Jeff, I'm going to ask you, we've got such a large group. I'll ask everybody to put their questions in the chat. And Jeff, if you see something that's real timely, if you'll jump in and tell me, otherwise I'll start answering questions at the end of my presentation. That works for everybody.
Very good. Thank you.
So we're going to start by talking about why negotiation is important. And like I just said, it's important because most organizations, numbers range anywhere from 70 to about 85%, but most organizations are willing to negotiate. And that means that if you're not negotiating, you're leaving money on the table. The other reason you want to consider negotiating is because there are things besides money that are important. And laying out your wants, your needs, your requirements up front makes for a much better work environment. So bottom line, almost every time negotiation is appropriate. And I just had a situation with a friend of mine a couple of months ago, and I thought it was really interesting, and it brought to mind something that I didn't realize. She was in a really great position where she went and interviewed with an organization, and that it wasn't quite the right fit for her. And they talked it through, and they agreed that it wasn't the right fit. And she went on about her job search, and they called her back about 2 weeks later and said, "We love you. We love your skill set, and we want to create a position for you." How great is that? Well, she called me and she said, "Krystal, I know you're always talking about negotiating, but they're creating a position. I can't negotiate, can I?" And I said, "Well, I still think you can. I think you need to be a little bit more careful about it, but you absolutely can." We talked about the numbers. She called them back. She negotiated, and she ended up with a much higher offer than she originally expected. So there's always money on the table. And on the rare occasions that there's not, if it's a legitimate company, they're absolutely not going to pull the offer because you tried to negotiate, as long as you do it the right way. So today, we're really going to talk about ways. There are some really great resources out in the world to teach you how to become an expert negotiator. If I've got salespeople on here that negotiate on a regular basis, you guys have some tricks and some tips up your sleeve, keep using them. But for the rest of us who are not used to negotiating, who are not particularly strong negotiators, I want to teach you some things that are going to work within your current skill set and within your current comfort zone. So the first piece of advice I know everybody has heard here time after time, and that's don't talk money too early, right? And yet we get asked at the very beginning. So before I jump into this, I've been asked a lot lately, what do I do when the job posting, when the application process makes me put in a number? And that's a hard one. If you can, you want to put in X's, zeros, something along those lines. A large range, and we'll talk about how to get to that range here in just a minute. But unfortunately, oftentimes it will make you put in a true number and just one number. So how do you do that? I just sat on a panel, I actually just moderated a panel with several recruiters, and they all had the same answer. So I want you to hear me. This is not coming from me. This is coming from some top recruiters in DFW, both internal and external. And what they suggest is that you put in the bottom number that you'd be willing to accept if all of the stars aligned elsewhere. You can always change this number later, and you probably should, but this is used as a screening tool. So put the lowest number you'd be comfortable with, just to help move you along the lines of the process. Now, at this point, I get people ask me, but what if my number's still too high? Well, then your number's too high and it's not going to be a good fit. So move on and focus your energy on an organization that's going to pay you what you're worth. So one of the top questions we get is, what were you making at your last job? And we unfortunately get that usually in the very first interview. Now, your response to that needs to not include a number. You want to say, and I put this in writing because I think it's important that you find words very similar to this, use your own words, but this is the exact message that you need to give. And it's that amount isn't relevant to this position. However, I'd love to hear what your range is. You see what we've did? We've deflected the answer, And then we've asked them if they're willing to share their number. Now, here's the deal. They do this all day, every day. You do not. Don't push back too hard. You're welcome to, but if you're really, truly interested in the position, don't push back too hard. But if you don't ask, you don't get. So they may be willing to tell you at that point. The whole point of this, again, this is a screening question. We want to make sure that we are on the same page here. So please tell us what you were making at your last job. Now, it's a terrible question because what you were making at your last job is not relevant, because we don't know if you were overpaid. We don't know if you were underpaid. We don't know if you're changing industries. So you want to try, you flat out don't want to answer this question. And this question has actually become illegal in some states. However, let me be clear, it is not illegal in Texas. It may not be the best question in the world to ask, but it is perfectly legal. So don't get too upset if you get asked it. It's still a very common question. So that amount isn't relevant. I'd love to hear what your range is. Hopefully they will tell you, and then you can move on. If they don't, I want you to be prepared to tell them what your range is, not what you were making at your last position, but what your range is, okay? And again, we're gonna talk in just a minute about how you're gonna come up with that range. The second question we tend to get asked is, what are your salary expectations? Obviously, this is a much better question. And again, we want to try to avoid answering it. I'm going to tell you guys, you want to defer this conversation as far in the process as you possibly can, okay? Do not answer it any earlier than you absolutely have to. However, again, if they're going to force you to talk very early, be prepared to do it and be prepared to do it accurately. So I don't know enough about this position yet to answer that, but I'd love to know what range you are offering. Again, we're deflecting the answer and we're going to push it back on them and hope that they'll answer it. Now, I hear one more question that I always like to address, and that's what's the least amount of money you're willing to take for this position? Okay, absolute worst question ever. When I get asked that question, my response is, now I've got a really bad sense of humor, but my response is always, what's the least amount of work I can do and still get paid? Okay, now there's a little tongue in cheek, take this with a grain of salt, but the point of responding that way is to tell them, man, that was a really rotten question. So if they get offended, I know this isn't a place I need to work because I know they're not going to value what I have to do. And if they're a good place to work, it's going to make them take a step back and go, wow, let me reword that. Let me try that again. Okay. But even at this stage, you have to remember that this is an interview is a two-way conversation. A negotiation is a two-way conversation. And you are not required to accept anything that they offer. If it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. And you should be willing to walk away at any point. Now, throughout this entire conversation, I want to take a step back and tell you, I'm talking very, very broadly, okay? I don't know your situation and you have to do what is right for your situation. And if that means for a minute taking a job that you are being underpaid for, you have to do what you feel is right for your situation. But if you do that, I highly encourage you to continue looking, because that's not where anybody needs to be. All right. So what is a good negotiation? A good negotiation is where you come up with a win-win, not where I win and you lose, not where you win and I lose, but where we both walk away feeling like we got what we needed. One of my favorite books on negotiation is by a man named Chris Voss. He's a retired FBI negotiator. And so he knows his stuff far better than I do, for sure. But one of the stories he tells in this book is about a husband and wife negotiating. They're going somewhere, the man puts on a suit and he pulls out his brown shoes and his wife goes, no, wear your black ones. But I really want to wear my brown ones, but I want you to wear your black ones. Compromise means he puts on one brown shoe and one black shoe. Now nobody won, right? And so I like to tell that story because a negotiation should never be about compromise. It should be finding a middle ground where everybody wins. It's a very slight shift in thinking, but it's a very important shift in thinking. Okay, so When we get asked about money early, we acknowledge the legitimacy of that question. I understand why you're asking, and I respect your need to know this now. However, deflect the answer. Not ready to tell you yet, but I'd love it if you'd be willing to answer me. Okay, we got that? Everybody feel good about that? Now let's talk about how we figure out, oh, and then we find the win-win, of course, right? I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to look and see if any of these questions need to be answered yet.
Well, one question was, Paul, Raul asked, what are the main negotiation points? I know that you can negotiate everything, but what are the most common yeses that you can negotiate?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we'll dig in a little bit deeper, but high level, you can negotiate benefits. Not all of them. Things like medical benefits are usually set in stone by the contract with the provider. But how about vacation time? How about schedules? Work from home has become a very big thing to negotiate now. So there's lots of different areas of negotiation, and usually if a signing bonus has become really big in the last several years, because I may not have the budget in my payroll, but I may be able to pull the money from somewhere else. So be creative. There's lots of areas that you can negotiate in. Did that answer that question?
Yeah, I think so. Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the only question that was on the chat.
Perfect. All right. Well, let's jump in. So the most important part and the most often skipped over part of a salary negotiation is spending the time to figure out what you are worth before you go into the process. Matter of fact, I want every single person on this call today, if you haven't already done it, I want you to go out and do a salary survey on yourself. I'm going to read this. I'm not a big fan of reading things off of my slides, but this is important. If you don't know your own value, somebody will tell you what your value is, and it'll be less than your worth. I always like to tell the story of my first quote unquote real job. I left college and worked retail for 7 years. And then I transitioned into my first real job in an office. And I was really excited about this position. Of course, I didn't negotiate. I took what was offered, which was significantly more than I was making in retail, working in an HR department in retail. And I'm there for 3 months. Everybody's telling me how I am rocking this job. I'm doing 10 times better than the person there before. And then, of course, I do payroll, and I stumble upon some payroll records as I'm running reports for the previous year. And I find out I'm making $15,000 less than the person I replaced, who everybody in the company has told me was terrible, and I'm doing 10 times better. Now, how do you think that made me feel? Now, I wasn't mad at the employer. I was mad at myself, because that I had $15,000 more I could have asked for. So I didn't do it because I didn't know how underpaid I was previously. I didn't know about the salary differences between industries. And I don't ever want to see anybody in that position. So you have to take the time to figure out what you are worth. And it is so much easier now than it was back in those days. That was when the internet was just coming out. Now there are so many websites out there where you can find salary information. One of my favorites is salary.com, because it will break down salaries by salaries by job description. So if I put in administrative assistant, now we all know what a broad job title administrative assistant is, right? It may be an $8 an hour receptionist doing nothing but answering the phones, fresh out of school. It may be $150,000 a year executive administrative assistant to the CEO of a Fortune 500 organization. However, if I'm applying for an administrative assistant job, I'm not going to say, oh, I'm worth anywhere between $8 an hour and $50 an hour, $75 an hour. That's silly. It doesn't make sense. I need to figure out, based on what my particular job duties and skill set are, where I fall in that range. So salary.com does a really good job of breaking it down. So as you further your research, you can find more. Glassdoor, I like, because real people are putting real numbers in there. So it can give you, this is what it's supposed to be. And then this is this is where you're really going to fall. So that's another great place. LinkedIn, if you have the paid version, every time you apply for a job, it will pull up salary indicators. And it's actually encouraging employers now to share their dollar amounts as well. We've got a long way to go on that, but it's getting better. There are other places, payscale.com. If you belong to a professional or trade organization, I belong to Dallas HR. When I want to know what an HR professional should make, I go to Dallas HR and they can provide me for our region some good numbers. And then often skipped US Bureau of Labor Statistics, Occupational Outlook Handbook. That is a long sentence. You can find good numbers there. And Texas does numbers by region and by industry as well. So there is no shortage of places that you can find this information. And I highly encourage you to go to multiple locations for this. Okay, because you're going to get slightly varying numbers from everybody, and that's okay. And then you've got to start using your common sense, your personal knowledge. If you're changing industries, go do some informational interviews with some other people, with some people who are already in the industry, in the position that you're looking for. Find out what they're making. And together you pull this all together and you start creating your numbers. Now, I want everybody to have 3 numbers. First one is your budget number. And I'm not talking about I'm unemployed, I'm pulling in $600 a week on unemployment, and I'm making mac and cheese for dinner every night numbers, okay? That's not the number I'm talking about. I'm talking about the pre-COVID. We like to go to the movies every weekend and we buy a large popcorn and we're going to drop $100 at the movies because that's how expensive it's become. What is it genuinely going to take to live your life? I'm talking about we put $200 a month into our vacation account budget. So do your budget first, figure out what's reasonable. Okay. What do I need to live off of? Take your partner's, income into consideration. This is something, as hard as budgets are to follow, this is something we should all be doing on a regular basis anyway. And that's a whole nother conversation. And that's a conversation you should have with your financial planner if you're not really sure how to go about this, but it's important to do. So the second number is, what is the minimum I should reasonably expected to be offered when all the stars align? It's 4 days a week. It's 100% remote. It's checks off all of my want and all of my need boxes. What's the minimum amount I should still be reasonably offered? Okay. Hopefully this number is higher than what your minimum I can afford to take number is. If it is lower, again, this may be a conversation for your financial advisor. Okay. But that's not what today is about. So we're not going to go into it. We're going to assume that that number's higher. And then what's the maximum I can reasonably ask for in my industry with my years of experience, assuming that things aren't exactly a little bit further drive than I expected, a little bit more travel. They want me to go in the office every single day and I really wanted one work from home day, whatever the case may be, right? So you figured out what those 3 numbers are. And I want you to do that. And again, this is an art more than a science. But if you spend 2 or 3 hours this weekend, you can come up with some pretty reasonable numbers. Now, while you're doing this, I encourage you to print out the documentation of where and how you came up with this. So when you enter into that negotiation with the organization, you can share that information. So if they come in $10,000 lower than your minimum, you can show them, well, I've done some research and this is what the market bears. Can you explain to me why you're coming in so much lower? And now you can have a respectful information exchange instead of getting annoyed and frustrated and walking away from it. Good, makes sense? Okay. Some other things that you want to take into consideration when you're doing this research is the company. This last year has really shown us some differences. So what are the position expectations? Again, remote work has become one of the most commonly asked for benefits that I've seen. But what are they expecting to use my minimum skills, or are they expecting to use my maximum skills? I like to pick on my assistant for this. My assistant is a retired executive from a transportation firm. She retired, she didn't like it. She's been working with me for several years. I pay her as well as I can, but obviously I can't afford to pay her an executive rate. She's literally, scheduling appointments for me and acting as an assistant, best assistant I could ask for. But, so position expectations, she's making less than she did when she retired from her full-time job because the position does not qualify for that. So is it a stretch job for me, or is it I can go in on autopilot every day? Company culture. This is something that's often overlooked, but again, very, very important. How close of a fit is it to me? What benefits am I going to get out of the culture? There are organizations in Silicon Valley that bring in breakfast, lunch, and dinner for their employees every year or every day. That adds up. Is this going to help offset some of my expenses? Tangible benefits. Those are the things we touched on earlier. I'm going to dig a little bit deeper here. Medical benefits, dental, life insurance, short and long-term disability. Not only whether they're available, but what the cost is to you. Okay, if you're going to work for Verizon, you're going to get some of the top medical benefits you can get in DFW for next to nothing, even with a family. If you come to work for me, you're going to be self-paying, and it's going to be significantly more expensive. So we don't think about those things, but they do come into play. So if the difference between paying $300 a month insurance for your family with, $1,000 maximum out of pocket versus paying $1,000 a month for your family with a $2,000 out of pocket. Now, if there's only a couple of $1,000s difference between where you are, you have to include those dollar amounts in there. What about vacation? Am I going to get an extra week of vacation? Well, what's your salary divided by 52? And that's the dollar value associated with that. So while we might not see the money in our pockets, we have to count in those tangible benefits as part of our compensation package. But then there's the intangible benefits. And those include things like company culture. I'm a talker. I know that comes as a shock to most people that meet me. But I'm the type of person, I've always excelled in organizations where everybody's friendly. There's water cooler talk. Let's go have a drink on Friday afternoon. But there are organizations out there where people come in, do their job, don't talk outside of work-related issues, and go home. And they don't know anything about each other outside of work. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm going to tell you, I would wither and die in that organization. Now, some people would hate my organization. They wouldn't do well in mine. There's no right way, but that company culture should be a driver in how much I'm willing to take, versus which end of the spectrum you want to land on. Other intangible benefits include, again, work from home, flexible work schedules. After I had my daughter, I left one job, took another one at a pretty significant pay cut, because not only did the culture shift from the job I was in, had a 60-hour a week work week culture, where the one I went to had a 45-hour a week, but the new job said, Krystal, if you need to work from home from time to time to be with your kid, go for it. Significant difference. That was my priority at that point in my life. And that meant more to me than it was an almost $10,000 pay cut I took. So what's important to you? And how is that being met in this organization? Things to keep in mind, again, as you're trying to figure out where in the range to find those numbers. Again, try to ask the company for that range. Now, it doesn't happen all the time, but it's amazing to me how often you ask the company and they actually come out higher than you expect. Guess what? You were probably being underpaid at your last job. So, we don't know until we look. Know how much leverage you have. Were you chasing them or were they chasing you? That's very, very important. Do you meet all of their requirements and then some, Or do you meet just a few of their requirements and the rest is a stretch and you're asking them to take a chance on you? And know when not to negotiate. So very rarely is this a thing, but there are times when negotiating is not the right option. So use some emotional intelligence. We all have it. Trust your gut. Just because Krystal said you should always negotiate, if everything around you is saying, you know, light bulbs off, don't negotiate, you know, trust your gut on that. And I'm going to take a little side trip here and talk about trusting your gut during the job search. Really, in general, people have a hard time with that. I think women do better with trusting their gut than men because it's your gut. It's a silly thing. It's, you know, facts show me. I'm going to tell you, there's actual scientific studies. I've always been a big trust your gut fan. And I read something about a year ago that talked about there's little micro nerves in your stomach that operate as a second brain. So I've always said, so that just kind of backs up my belief. I've always said your gut is your subconscious telling you something your conscious hasn't caught up with yet. So if your gut tells you anything throughout the job process, not just with negotiation, but with, ooh, I don't know about this organization. I'm not sure about these questions they're asking me. I'm getting a bad vibe. I'm not going to tell you to trust it blindly, but dig a little deeper. Okay. All right. Again, things to consider. Are you currently working? Unfortunately, it is and probably always will be a fact that it's easier to find a job when you have a job. Now, we've just gone through a pandemic, a massive layoff, a bit of a job recession. Employers are a lot more relaxed about it right now. And I'm going to tell you, if you line up 10 recruiters and ask them, every single one of them is going to tell you and mean it. Of course, just because somebody lost a job doesn't mean they're any less qualified or strong of a candidate. But when we are in the process, our subconsciouses, our biases take over, and we tend to consider candidates that are working first. Can't explain why, you know, why we can't overcome that, why that's such a struggle, but it's a fact. So if you're working, you've got more negotiating power, but you've also got more negotiating power simply because you can take your time. How close of a fit are you? You know, again, do you have those qualifications? Are you stretching? The health of the company. This is a big thing. I'm going to tell you, if you go into the hospitality industry right now, they're going to have a lot less wiggle room with salaries than technology is. You know, if you go to work for Zoom, they've probably got a little bit of money, right? They've taken off over the last year. They're very, very healthy. The hospitality industry is struggling right now. So understand what that looks like. Again, benefits, very, very important. Make sure you assign a dollar value to those benefits because they do make a difference. And then are you chasing them or are they chasing you? This is a big deal because if you've begged them every step of the way to take you on, and then you enter into a negotiation and you immediately go asking for $40,000 more than they've offered, that's likely to turn them off, right? But if they've been chasing you, you've got a lot more wiggle room to say, hey, you know, I think I'm interested, but I'm not going to have this discussion unless you can meet X. So emotional intelligence, trusting your gut, you know, keeping your eye open and looking at all factors is very, very important through this process. And then finally, my last piece of advice after you've negotiated something different than they've originally offered you, get it in writing. It doesn't have to be a formal offer letter. Okay. And a lot of organizations, even larger ones, don't have formal offer letters. I don't know why. I tell all of my HR clients that they need to do that, but if they can't at least send you an email in writing that says, here's what we offer, then you have to ask yourself why. And I've never come up with a good reason. I'm not going to tell you there's not one, there might be, but I've never come up with a good reason not to have it in writing. So the way you do that, generally you're going to start the negotiation over the phone. They're going to call you, they're going to make you an offer. You're going to say, Thank you so much. I'm so excited about this. Can you send me the offer in writing? And I'll get back to you in a couple of days. Give them a timeline. When you get it, then you can review it, and then you can come back and negotiate whether you want to do that in writing or whether you want to do that over the phone again or in person, although that's becoming, far-fetched. Then you can come back with your counteroffer. Once you've agreed to everything, you ask them, can you go ahead and email that to me? The reason we want to do that, of course, we know that employers never, ever mislead us. So even knowing that, we want to make sure that we don't have any misunderstandings. And we want to make sure, especially if we've negotiated something future, right? We're going to give you a signing bonus if you last 90 days. We're going to talk about changing your title. We're going to offer you this lower amount now, but up it in set amount of time. If we want that in writing, so if something happens between now and then, especially if something happens to that person who you negotiated with, we want to make sure we've got supporting documentation so we don't just sound like somebody who's making it up. Well, John, who left 3 weeks after I started, promised me, this. We don't know anything about it, right? So that's why it's very, very important to do it. So recap, again, I keep this as easy as possible. This is not for seasoned negotiators. This is for those of us who are just trying to get a new job, but we need to take care of ourselves. And ladies, I'm looking at you when I say this. We historically do not stand up for ourselves. We historically, even when we're told the amounts that are offered, go in low. I'm a firm believer that this is why we make less money in the marketplace than men, far more so than because companies are out there thinking, hey, I'm going to pay the woman less. It's not that. It's because given the same opportunity to negotiate, we usually ask for less. So get over that. This is not a time to be modest and start defending your worth. So know your market value, research the company, get a salary range when you can, and put that conversation off as long as humanly possible. It's uncomfortable. If the company doesn't bring it up for the first, second, third interview, I know I've got clients, they will start sweating it. What if the company comes back and they're way too low? Well, if they do, then you've got some good interview practice in and you're going to walk away. Plain and simple. So questions. If you have questions you are not comfortable asking online, feel free to send me an email. But in the meantime, I see some things in the chat. So let's.
Yeah, so one person asked, can you please repeat the specific response that you recommend to have ready about deflecting the salary?
Oh, at the very beginning, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to pull that screen back up because I think that's important. Okay. I don't know enough about the position to answer that. What range are you offering? Okay. So the ideal with this is get it into your own words. These are mine. And if you don't talk like this, that's okay. Get into your own words and then go stand in front of the mirror and practice it until it comes naturally, because this does not come naturally to most people. And I can't tell you how many clients I have worked with and we talk it out and they're like, Krystal, this makes so much sense. I get it. And you get on that first interview and you get asked that question and you blurt out a number. Don't do that. Practice, practice, practice till this is what comes out of your mouth.
Karen asked, how and when do you get detailed information about healthcare, deductibles, copays, plans? Am I limited to what doctors, do I need for specific for specialists, et cetera?
So you're usually not going to get that information till you hit the negotiation phase. And when that offer is made and you ask them to send you that information in writing, this is a great time to say, I'd really like to see your benefit plan as well, if I could at this point. And then you're going to probably have to go online and do some research for things like providers and specialists, unless it happens to be one of the larger plans that covers just about everybody. So, and that's why it's so hard, because I know this is important to you, but I'm going to tell you from an employer perspective. If I tell you, and bear with me, I try to keep my numbers simple. If I tell you that my range is between $18 and $20 an hour, that's what I hired my last recruiter at. And you come in at the get-go asking for 25 an hour, I'm going to say, bye-bye, don't have time for you. I can't afford you. If I've told you that's my number and you need 25, I don't recommend you pursuing me. Okay. I dealt with a whole lot of frustrated recruiters and I had to repeatedly say, that's great. I know you're worth that because you've got 25 years of experience. I'm looking for a sourcer with 2 years experience. I can't afford that. But if I'd had the right person go through, I've invested time, I've invested effort. I really, really like this person. And now they want $21 an hour. I'm far more likely to consider it. So I got a little off track there, but it's hard to wait till the end to have that conversation, but the negotiation is far more effective and the employer is far more willing to negotiate the further on in the process you are.
All right, Keisha asked, job titles seem to dictate salary. How do we determine what is applicable?
You've got to focus on skills and duties and what you've accomplished, what you bring to the table. So this is a whole nother conversation, but part of having an effective resume is telling them what you've achieved, how you impact each organization, as opposed to having a list of job duties. You've got to take the focus off of the title and focus more on the skills, the requirements, and the expectations of the position. Did that answer that?
Keisha, did that answer your question?
Yeah, I understand that you focus on the skills and what you bring to the table, but when you're trying to identify your salary and those resources you spoke about, you need to bring up a job title probably. How do you identify which job title applies to what it is you're looking for?
Okay, that's why I like salary.com. They do a pretty good job of breaking that down. That's another one of those, this is an art form. You know, it's an art, not a science. You've just got to kind of dig in, do your best. The other way to do it is, you know, start looking at job postings. Open up your job posting across the country, your job search. You don't have to apply to any of these, but start doing searches based on those skills or based on that broad job title. And as you look at the responsibilities and as you narrow that down, you'll narrow down that job title a little bit more. That's a hard one.
Can you go to your last slide that has your email address on it again? Somebody was asking for your email address.
I sure can. There you go.
There we go.
There's probably a better way to do that, but.
Yes. Any other questions anybody has?
Hi, this is Christina. I'd like to ask one. It's too confusing to write, so I'd like to ask it.
Okay.
Sure.
So, you know, I'm in the oil and gas, and like in the past, I had a former company I worked at where they had different pay levels, A, B, C, and D. And when I entered that company, it was in 2009. So I came in at a D level because of the industry was so, you know, was so damaged at the time. So how does a person, and most likely that's the kind of level we'll be coming into in big, larger organizations. How do we get from that D level to an higher pay, you know, B or A level?
Well, that's usually some of it's experience, some of it's going to be your capabilities. So it's about selling yourself. It's about showing them that you're capable of doing that A-level work. And if you can't get in that way, sometimes this is part of the negotiation. We're going to negotiate D, but we're going to sit down in 3 months. And during these 3 months, I'm going to do some of these C-level requirements, and I'm going to prove to you that I've got the capabilities. And if I do, if I meet these well-defined goals,
right,
then you're going to bump me up.
So the HR never looked at it that way. They just said, well, that's the time of year, or that's the time of the industry when you came in. we were at a downturn. So that's where your pay scale will be until you leave. You know, they said I would never bump up because of the I guess, the economy at the time. It makes no sense, but that's how
No.
they had everything
So-
leveled out.
The way I would overcome that is by working with your direct supervisor.
Okay.
I mean, that's it. You've got a rigid HR department who's going to lose good people because they're not valuing them. And you get your hiring manager, maybe the next level up in your corner, and things will start happening.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Krystal, can I make a question?
Yes, go ahead, Raul.
I went to a series of interviews, and now my next interview is with HR. What are my main topics? I know your presentation, and I know that in one point you will be going to the salary and the benefits, but usually in the first interview with HR, what you need to prepare for that?
So HR is going to determine that you have the basic capabilities, right? They're generally not going to get real technical with you as far as your skill set. They want to make sure that you're going to be a company fit, a culture fit, and that they've got some sort of a checklist, and that it's going to vary by organization, that they want to make sure you check A, B, and C. And if you do, then they're going to move you on to the next stage. So what you really need to prepare with there, Google common interview questions, do the pit crew, everything you heard before I started talking, every bit of advice I heard this morning is exactly what I share with my clients. So just prepare the basics. Okay, there's always going to be surprise questions no matter what level you're at, but you can at least prepare for the basics. So, and it's amazing to me how many high-level professionals aren't prepared for the tell me about yourself, you know, for the strengths and weaknesses, which when you're a mid-level manager, nobody's ever going to say, tell me what your greatest weaknesses are, but they are going to ask you questions along the lines of, you know, what do you struggle with the most in this position? It's the same question. It's just laid out differently. So Google common interview questions. If you'd like to reach out to me, I can send you my list. There's my email address. I'm happy to do that. Write out your answers and practice. Because if you can get those basics out of the way, then you're going to be much more prepared to dig into the things that you're not expecting.
Raul, let me ask you a question, because I think you've already had a couple interviews with the company and now they're going to hook you up with HR for the next interview. Is that what you were asking?
Yes, sir.
So,
Have you already
Krystal,
talked to the hiring manager?
Yeah, I have 8 or 10 interviews.
Oh my, no, this may be your negotiation.
Well, I don't know. For that reason, I was asking, okay, what I need to prepare. How I want to be ready. I was ready for the other interviews. I prepared my question, but now it's HR, right? It's totally different. I never negotiate anything with HR. It's my first experience, and really, I'm like a unknown field, you know.
You know, be ready with your salary numbers. Be ready with your expectations.
Okay.
Figure out your numbers. You only need to bring the top 2 with you. They don't care about your budget and it's none of their business, but bring your numbers, bring your, this is what I'd like benefits wise, and this is what I need benefits wise. That way you're ready to negotiate. Okay.
Okay.
Because it sounds
Thank
like
you.
this might be where that's at, and be prepared, you know, to ask questions around their salary or their benefits offering. And I can't imagine if you've had 8 interviews, they're not going back to the basics here. They're ready to make a decision.
I cross my fingers.
Good luck. Good luck.
Good luck. Daniel asked a really good question. As someone fresh out of graduate school, I've been told that the salary you take at your first job determines your salary for the rest of your career. Is that true?
It absolutely can, because here's the deal. Well, and actually this brings up something else too. On average, these are statistics, I didn't make them up. On average, when you're at a position, you get a 3% raise every year, right? Some companies do a little bit, but actually I think the true number is 5, right? 5%. When you move from one job to another, you're going to take on average a 15% increase. So if you start at $30,000, you know, at 5% every year, what does that look like in 10 years? Whereas if you start at $50,000, same thing. So you can absolutely overcome that, but there's a lot of truth to that statement. Yes.
But also, I think it also matters that if you take that first job, you don't necessarily want to make that your lifetime. You don't, if you stay at that job for the next 20 years, you will make considerably less than if you change jobs every 2 to 3 years.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
All right. Any other questions? Oh, Daniel, go ahead.
Oh, part of the reason I'm asking that question is just because I have a PhD, but I'm willing to take jobs that don't necessarily require it. But I don't think they would, make up the pay difference in that necessarily. And I don't want to like shoot myself in the foot, but I don't want to pass up opportunities or just be sitting around out of work when I could be working instead. So
that's when you do your numbers, right?
Mhm.
Figure out what you're worth, and then apply to what looks interesting, and just, know where your limits are and know what you're willing to accept. And do the research on those non-PhD positions.
Mhm.
You'd be surprised. You're 90% correct, but there's that small percentage of organizations who don't take that degree into consideration and may still pay just fine, regardless, even though they're not asking for it.
Right. And as Krystal said too, once you do have a job, your chance of getting another job is better because you are employed. And so, you may take a little less for that very first job, but you'll be in a better position to leverage the second, third, fourth jobs because you're working and you're getting that experience.
And sometimes that first job, you've just got to take it, right? Regardless. And then now to negotiate and how to negotiate, you can quickly overcome that. The problem is people don't overcome that, and that's why they can't get out of that rut, and that's why they continue to not make more money. Did I say that well?
But it is something that, but it's something that could be overcome.
100%, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
The problem
Thank
is
you.
most people don't negotiate. If we were in a room, there's about 50 people on this call. If we were in a room, and I said, who has never negotiated a job? At least half the people would raise their hands. When I ask who negotiated their last job, usually out of 55 people will raise their hands. This is the problem, is that we don't do what we need to do to overcome that.
Right. Any other questions? Anybody else? Questions?
Can you go over the acknowledge deflect points again? Is that a new one? Yes.
That's a new one, yes.
Okay. So I understand why you're asking this question, and I absolutely don't want to waste your time any more than you want to waste my time. Okay. We're acknowledging, but I'm not ready to answer this question yet. So if they're asking what your current salary is, you're actually going to tell them that it's not relevant, and it's not. And you are never obligated to share what your current or previous salary was, ever. I don't care what anybody tells you, you are not obligated. You may choose to at some point, and that's fine, but okay. I understand why you're asking, and I respect it, and I don't want to waste your time. I'm not ready to answer this question yet, either because my previous job isn't relevant or because I don't know enough about this position yet. However, I'd like to hear what your salary range is. That's the deflect.
Great. All right. Let's see here. As a runner-up several times, do you recommend trying to connect with the interviewers on LinkedIn, including including time frame. I'm not really sure what she means by time frame,
But yes, absolutely. If you feel like you had a good interview, try to connect on, this is a great place to send your thank you note. Try to connect on LinkedIn and say, hey, thanks so much. I really enjoyed getting to know you. Connect.
right. Krystal, will you tell us a little bit about your book?
Yes. So this book is everything you ever wanted to know about job hunting. I think too many people don't know how to do it. So all they do is write a resume, which is a history of their job. And then they start hitting that apply button online. And that is the least effective way to job hunt. So this job, and it focuses on people who are who don't know what they want to do next. And yes, I work with a lot of mid-level. I work with far fewer entry-level people and far more mid to late like career people. How do I figure out what I want to do next? How do I put my documentation together? And then how do I enter the process the most effectively and efficiently? And the information Karen shared earlier, there's a lot of that in this book. But it's just meant to be taken one chapter at a time as you hit each stage, and how to job hunt outside of clicking that apply button.
Right. And the book is available on Amazon, because that's where I got this picture from.
Yes, yes, it is. And if you want to swing by my office, I've got copies in the office that you don't have to pay tax on.
Right. Very good. All right. Well, Krystal, thank you very much. Great information. I think that, this is always a very interesting topic, because everybody talks about resumes. We talk about interviewing. We talk about all the other subjects, but we never talk about the very final part of the interview, the closing, we talk about closing the deal, but all right, now you get to negotiations. That's another whole avenue. So thank you very much for your time and your presentation this morning.
Absolutely. I enjoy doing it.
Great. Next Friday, our speaker is Catherine Byer-Breet. She's going to talk about, is consulting right for you? If you have not put your 30-second introductions into the chat box, please do so now. I will copy all those. I will put those into an email this afternoon, so you can try to network with those people who are out on the call. It'll go out along with the roster from today. Please join Career DFW and Career USA every week. We're putting on training 5 days a week right now. Next Monday, for Networking Mondays, Walt Glass will be our speaker. He's going to talk about networking, informational interviewing. On Tuesday, Terry Sullivan will be with us to talk about how to create a LinkedIn brand that tells your key contacts who you are, what you do, and how you help. Please note this event will not be recorded, will not be available to watch after the fact. Terry does not allow his presentations to be recorded. So once it's on Facebook, I'll delete it as soon as the event's over. So you do need to watch it live if you want to see it. Next Wednesday, for our special guest speaker series for the month of April, behavioral interviewing with Paul Walsh. And then next Thursday, for Effective Resume Thursdays, we actually have a special guest speaker, Andy Cook. Many of you in the DFW area know who Andy is. She'll be sharing her resume tips and tricks with us next Thursday. This session has been recorded. It will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel. It'll be up on the YouTube channel in a couple hours. It takes YouTube a couple hours to get things processed and uploaded. So you'll be able to go back and review this program as often or as many times as you need if you want to catch the words that Krystal talked about today. Please follow us on Facebook. When you follow us on Facebook, every time we go live, you get your phone will give you a little buzz. And every time, if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you'll get a email saying, hey, we just posted a new video up there. You can go back and watch it. And I do know that people are watching the videos on the weekend or watching them at nighttime because they couldn't be with us during the day. On the YouTube channel, it looks something like this. Please be sure to click on playlist. It's the easiest way to see everything. And don't click on the video, but down where you see the red arrow, click where it says view full playlist. And then up will come a list of all the dates, and along with the title of every event that we've done. And if it's not sorting correctly, click the little sort button right on the very top and sort it from newest to oldest. And that way you'll see the most recent videos that we put up there. I think we have over 190 videos on the YouTube channel we put up in the last year. So thank you for joining us today. Have a great weekend. Hopefully we'll see you one day next week. Krystal, once again, thank you very much for your time. And if there's anything I can do to help anybody, please let me know. Watch my email a little bit later this afternoon.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you.